So this is part B of the Khoodeelaar television channel, World Exclusive Diagnosis of Fleet Street, on Sunday, the 4th of April 2021. And we have posted before this one. This is the Dirty Digger Murdoch's Scum on Sunday. But we make an exception in noting this one. Now, we have absolutely never agreed with anything that Karan Brady has said before. But this one is significant for a number of reasons, and I'll explain those. One, that she says, she starts this paragraph, the first paragraph, obviously as a white woman, I'm not in a position to give a view on how rife racism is within this country. If she wrote nothing else underneath that, that would have been absolutely perfect. Because that is true. She wouldn't know, as a white woman, how rife racism is in this country. And that is, secondly, that is important because she is a white woman. She would know that. And even if she did have any rare kind of access to the extent of racism in this country, she wouldn't be losing any of her rights as a human being if she didn't do anything about it. And that is applicable to the vast majority of people like her, white people, who are not affected by racism. They are affected in the long run, but not anywhere nearly as directly or devastatingly as the people who are targeted by racist behavior and conduct and attitude every single day. And the phrase institutional racism that has been given the lead kind of platform in the racist report fronted by two of Boris Johnson coconuts was never an issue, because individual racism is what actually affects people day to day. The institution comes after. An institution comes only after the small number of people try to get any kind of remedy by seeking the known establishment of institutions, for example, the courts, the police, and any other outlet that is supposedly in existence to provide remedies. And this is not happening because people don't go to the police seeking remedies. And if people went to the police won't respond. So this was not something that ordinary people would have discussed at any length, or at first, or as the first aspect or item in the discussion about racism. So when the racist Fleet Street, Daily Mail, the Scum, and others said that Boris Johnson had discovered that Britain was not an institutionally racist country, they were adding an aggravational kind of facet to an already racist report. And Karen Brady is not somebody that would normally write anything about racism, and most certainly not anything that could be cited and quoted as opposing Boris Johnson or the Conservatives. Now, she only wrote this one because her main career has been spent in the field of football, the business of football. And in the course of that, she has come across too many incidents of racism taking place, occurring in front of her. And as a human being, I suppose that is something that she could not just deny. So that is why this column. Now, I have to add that whoever edits this or subs this piece, I don't believe that Karen Brady writes all of this, because this piece reads like a normally edited, subbed piece. Whether that is the case or not, I'm just mentioning. But the essential evidence contained in that and that summarized in that first paragraph is from Karen Brady. That is what I'm saying. Now, there are other people like Karen Brady, white persons, men or women, who could have written similar pieces based entirely on their evidence, which would have exposed Boris Johnson's racist report for what it is, a racist cover-up. And as Doreen Lawrence has said, it gives the green lights to racists. So the fact that people in the kind of society in the country have essentially kept quiet about their knowledge of racism shows that there is both individual and institutional racism in this country. Not only that, racist incidents are on the increase. And we go back to the discussion about the Black Lives Matter, within quotation marks, movement in the UK. And we go back to discussing various attempts that I have been involved with in creating a movement, a platform for remedies against racism in this country. Remedies including education and the extensive programs that I have been involved in setting up have, of course, been interrupted and disrupted by racists, directly and indirectly. And I will include the role of the local council in the case, this current case of Tower Hamlets, as a racist disruptor the role of the Newham Council as racist disruptor, and the details of the roles as racist disruptors played by Newham Council and Travellers Council. The details, mainly the details relate to the behavior of people who are themselves of African descent or Asian descent or Asian background, African background, including those coming through the Caribbean in the case of the African descendants. And this last 24 hours has witnessed the appearance, to our knowledge, our evidential knowledge, of elements that are very, very significant. I mean, anyone who knows the events of the last 50 years, let's say, or 70 years, let's say, in the case of the Palestinians being attacked 70 plus years ago, would know that it would be unthinkable to find a person of Pakistani background, a Muslim, apparent Muslim of Pakistani background, to describe themselves on Twitter account mainly and only as a campaigner against anti-Semitism. No mention of Palestine, no mention of anti-Muslim. A Muslim sounding name person describing themselves mainly as a campaigner against anti-Semitism is astonishingly rare. But that is the kind of description of people who are surfacing in the last, let's say, 2 weeks or so. And they're doing the surfacing mainly to oppose Muslims, like the protesting Muslims in Batley, West Yorkshire in England, and then supporting Boris Johnson's coconut team that has produced an absolutely racist pack of denial of racism in this country. So in the last 24 hours, a Pakistani man saying that he's or Pakistani kind of sounding named person, a thorough fact check may reveal that he's with a Pakistani name, but he may not be a Muslim or Muslim background. He may be a Christian. With that proviso, let's say that he is a Pakistani person. And he is saying to the people who follow his Twitter account that Trevor Terrible Pea Leaves, that's our name, Trevor Terrible Pea Leaves has done a video destroying identity politics. Now, identity politics is a phrase that is used by racists. Racists have been confecting all kinds of words and phrases, except the one that says that they are racist or they're supporting racism. Identity politics is one of the phrases they apply to people who use their backgrounds as part of their identity and description in context, and as part of the evidence that because of that they have been attacked by racists and others. So this is not an offense. It is not a crime, it's not illegal, and it is not superfluous to the need in context. It's part of the general statement of the identity of a person, making the case against racism and against bias and against all the discrimination and hatred. Why Trevor Terrible Pea Leaves is being recommended by a person with a Pakistani name who says that their main activity is against anti-Semitism. What he's saying is that he's really targeting Muslims. So this is the second or a third Pakistani origin person that has surfaced in the last, let's say, 2 weeks. The previous one, 2 days ago, was Sarah Khan, described as a Bradford-born Muslim woman. I mean, Sarah Khan is, of course, technically Bradford-born and technically born to a Muslim kind of family. But all her records of the last, let's say, 15 years, since she was recruited to spy on the community and act as a spy against the community by Tony Blair and his kind of cabal in 2005, all Sarah Khan has done is at every kind of occasion, she has added anti-Muslim hatred and justified anti-Muslim hatred by blaming the target, the Muslims. That is what Sarah Khan has done in the last 15 years in that context. So Sarah Khan came through the article written by two white women, Rachel Sylvester and Alice Thompson, I think. And the highlight of Sarah Khan's promotion has been the slogan or the phrase, "There is no right not to be offended." Now, this is something that is only applied against Muslims or any other person from African or Asian backgrounds who has been targeted for racist attacks and vilification and demonization. And the supporters of the attacks come out and say that anyone who protests against being insulted or offended should be told that they have no right, because there is no right to not to be offended. Now that's a complete lie, because every day, every single day, let's say the last 75 years, the British Fleet Street contains more than 40% of its so-called editorial contents about offensive behavior, offensive words, offensive policies. So Sarah Khan is not only telling a lie, but she's doing so from the total, utter depth of darkness and stupidity and ignorance of basic facts. Now, as Alan Duncan has said about Boris Johnson, he is a buffoon, but we don't say that he is only a buffoon. We say that Boris Johnson, like so much of Trump and others, capitalizes on lying. It's not just an incidental kind of act that he lies, but he lies as his stock in trade. He lies and he denies and he does all the other related things, as Jennifer Arcuri has said to the Mirror Group, that when he tried or discussed kissing her in the street, Johnson replied, words to the effect, because I'm not reading the actual transcript or text of what the Mirror Group has published. I remember what they published, but the main thing is that he turned around or he told her, Boris Johnson, because it was a time when he was still incumbent as the so-called mayor at the expense of London. So he said words to the effect that he was the mayor and it was his city. He said that London was his city. He meant it in a proprietorial way, not in a general common way of being a person living in London or existing in London. But he said that as if he owned London. And it was followed by that statement, or that part of the statement was followed by the assertion that, and quoting him, I don't care. Now, Boris Johnson doesn't care, not just about the fact that it would be an embarrassing, offensive act for him to kiss in public. Not only that, as everyone knows, London has got, according to various reports, over the last 10 years, the largest per capita number of CCTV cameras in the whole world. So if he was kissing his mistress while he was very much officially married to Marina Wheeler, that could be one of the things that he shouldn't have done, because it could be cited in evidence against him on any kind of grounds. Now, if somebody like Boris Johnson doesn't care in that way, then you can imagine, or it can be imagined, that he would not care about anything else either. For example, when he was confronted with serious questions about why he insulted and made offensive remarks against Muslim women who wore burqa, he said, he didn't give any reason. He said that is what he believes. Now, anyone watching this must realize that we are doing this very carefully about the evidence. We are not making any comment without evidence. And this is very important because so many things happening around the world at this moment concerning rights, concerning racism, concerning nationality, concerning all the big issues about people's identity. Remember what Trevor Terrible Phillips has been doing. He is apparently being praised for attacking identity politics. But identity of people based on their ethnicity, their race, their culture, and other aspects of their identity. Identity is at the center of encounters, confrontations, violations, denials, and assertions. Now, when the issue of identity is discussed, as I said earlier in this particular edition, it is almost always used as a pejorative expression, an expression that is not used by the speaker or the referrer or the user, acknowledging people's rights and entitlements based on their identity in this context. So, for example, going back to the various decisions made by Ronald Reagan, who undermined the foundation of the United Nations and its agencies, especially when he recalled and withdrew the USA from membership of UNESCO. That was Ronald Reagan, and I'm speaking from memory. I haven't got a script of the actual statement, but that is what happened, and it will be verifiable. Now, when Ronald Reagan attacked UNESCO, Reagan used a number of untruths and smears and lies, all of which were inspired by and based on racism and racist intolerance of that part of the UNESCO's role that actually opposed racism and gave people of African and Asian origins and backgrounds and legacies a positive, recognizable kind of representation and position in the narrative, in the commentary. The UNESCO didn't cost the USA anything, even worth mentioning, as compared to the trillions of dollars, even that time when Reagan was in post, the US state wasted in nuclear and other war proliferation and other things. So when I said at the beginning that I was involved, and I have been involved in the many projects that are overdue, including projects to set up platforms to permanently monitor, identify, dissect, and oppose all the accessible and known activities, contributions for racism and racist denials. Now, I have been obstructed, disrupted, as I said also, at every stage by the local councils and the rest of it. That is to say, any other organization or agency of the state. And my contributions, the written contributions, the comments and diagnoses that I have written and tried to get published by the Times and the Guardian and other so-called mainstream Fleet Street, they have suppressed my writing, like the Times suppressed remarkably suppressed a very important letter from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. The Times only admitted that years later, decades later. So it's not just me. Most of the people who have opinions based on evidence, and opinions and evidence that actually affect very much, very substantially, affects the lives and futures of individuals and communities and societies, are routinely suppressed by the Times. And a letter to the Times still remains the main heading in the context of people writing letters to the Fleet Street papers. I mean, the letter to the Guardian is not as common or widespread. A letter to the Telegraph is not either. Letter to the Daily Mail or the Scum or even the Sunday Times don't compare in terms of the recurrence of references. So I have covered all the main issues that have been in the topical kind of news, what is it called, running orders in the last 20 years. I have done that in the previous 20, 30 years, and I'm still doing it. And everything that has been disrupted, say by Tower Hamlets Council, we shall discuss Newham Council's role another time, because the frequency of the disruption and obstruction and denial and lying done by the personnel in post in Tower Hamlets Council is, by all kind of accounts, much more intense and frequent. Remember, this is the campaign that also is campaigning for justice for those 4 schoolgirls from Bethnal Green, let's say. Bethnal Green is in East London, in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, in London, UK, within quotation marks. I mean, one of the items in Monday's Financial Times, which we are not looking at, but we shall be looking at later. One of the topics in the Financial Times on Monday, the 5th of April 2021, is a reference to Boris Johnson's tactics, within quotation mark, Brexit tactics, are being imitated or copied by the SNP, or those in Scotland who support the Scottish independence from the, quote, UK. And that is why the quotation marks are needed within, when using the 2 letters UK. That Johnson is being haunted or hounded or being kind of attacked politically, tactically by the SNP and the others who support the cause for an independent Scotland, who are using some of the remarkable tactics that Johnson used in his Brexiteering lies. I mean, the Financial Times doesn't use the word lies against him, but that's what they mean. Or that is what contextually the phrase on the item they are running in Monday's Financial Times means. So when we are talking about these girls, Shamima Begum and her 3 friends, 2 friends that she was photographed with in February 2015, and the other one who had left the UK in December 2014, and whom these 3 girls met not long after they arrived in Syria themselves. So we are campaigning, this campaign by the Khoodeelaar campaign, calling justice for Shamima, actually should be treated as a campaign for justice for the other 3 girls as well, so the 4 girls. And the definition of what we are asking for justice to be established about is the time when these 4 girls needed guidance and safeguarding. When we now know, we don't know the full details of what actually happened, but we now know that they were targeted directly and indirectly from people operating in Tower Hamlets itself. We didn't know this until we checked in the last fortnight. We checked the entry on Sharmina Begum, the one that had left the UK in December 2014. Until we checked the entry on the Wikipedia online about her. And it was in that entry that we found the reference to the complex called the East London Mosque. It's a building complex in the Whitechapel Road, not very far from the Aldgate Eastern exit underground station. And we read in that entry in the last fortnight, because we have saved the copy, so even if Wikipedia has been approached by anyone and persuaded to remove that particular entry, it won't change anything because we have got the evidence already. And anyone trying to be clever to confect a denial won't succeed because the item has been publicized already by us and by others that we are in contact with, let's say. So that entry we read for the first time in the last fortnight, let's say. And for the first time, we read that two women belonging to a thing called Sisters Forum, not the Sisters Forum, but it just says Sisters Forum, and based, it says, in the East London Mosque. It doesn't say the London Muslim Center, it says East London Mosque. So remember what location it is saying. And it says that these two women targeted Sharmina quite extensively. You don't have to hear the actual words all over again because we have said this before we've read the thing. So when Shamima and the other two friends of hers arrived in Syria, the entry says they met Sharmina Begum. So from that we are saying that when the two women belonging to Sisters Forum in the East London Mosque targeted Sharmina, they must have targeted the other three girls as well. Or it is most likely that they did target them. Quite why Sharmina was the one to leave and these other three left a few months later has not been explained in that entry, but it suggests a link, a remote link or a second tier kind of link. But a link there must have been, because if these girls, these three later arrivals in Syria, hadn't known the first arrival, which is Sharmina Begum, they wouldn't have met that one when they arrived in Syria themselves. So there must have been some connection. And the fact that they're only these three other girls, other than Sharmina Begum, went to Syria less than 3 months after Sharmina herself went there, also suggests a kind of connection. So, when Tower Hamlets Council discovered that publicly known mainstream so-called British media were reporting that these three girls, had crossed into Syria through Turkey, they should have acted. To what extent they should have acted, we are not saying specifically because there was no action by them. So we don't know what they left out or what they didn't leave out. The bottom line is that they didn't act in accordance with their duties to safeguard these children according to the law and according to the needs of these children. And the needs could not be defined by us. It could only be defined by the actual situation in which these girls were at every stage. And the fact that the Wikipedia entry refers to the East London Mosque and the Sisters Forum suggests the Tower Hamlets Council and its paid employees for carrying out the service to safeguard children should have made inquiries and should have established the basic grounds and the circumstances that applied to the safeguarding action, emergency action to be taken to safeguard these children. They didn't do that. Now, that was 2015 when the news was published first time, as far as we are concerned. And in the time from February 2015 up to the 26th of February 2021, when the Supreme Court ruled against Shamima Begum, there had been 6 calendar years. And as far as can be established, Tower Hamlets Council has made remember what we are saying, no public statement about these girls. And the fact that it hasn't made any public statement about these girls is a fact that has been made known by us, nobody else. And we have been making various statements about the role played by Tower Hamlets Council, or the role that should have been played by Tower Hamlets Council but wasn't played by Tower Hamlets Council as the local council that is responsible in law for providing service to safeguard children in any level, any state of need, urgency, emergency. As far as we know, the various licensed law traders that have been actually in contact with Shamima Begum or have been in contact with Shamima Begum's particular part of the family still in the UK, because her father reportedly is not living in the UK anymore. That is the publicly known kind of evidence. Whatever the contacts the licensed law traders made, whoever they were, with anyone relating to Shamima Begum in terms of family, those licensed law traders didn't make any reference to the role played or not played by Tower Hamlets, the local council. And that is in contrast to what we have been doing. We have been raising questions about these children being neglected, let down, betrayed, and put at risk, in fact, significantly because of the failure of Tower Hamlets Council to do its duty. The only reference the licensed law traders made was to the Metropolitan Police and their kind of withholding information. We don't know what information they withheld, but we know that the licensed law traders have been reportedly making the claim that the Metropolitan Police didn't tell the parents of Shamima Begum and by implication the other girls something. What that was, we cannot say because it hasn't been described in public. All we know is that there has been a substantial allegation that the Metropolitan Police didn't keep Shamima Begum's parents informed. To what extent, we don't know. But the council has not been the subject of any substantial reference in this context by the licensed law traders. Now that is a piece of evidence about the ignorance on the part of the licensed law traders, that they didn't mention the role of Tower Hamlets Council. And in our view, Tower Hamlets Council played a decisive, negligent, illegal role in exposing these children to the danger that they could have been saved from if the council had done its safeguarding children duties. Anyone watching this hopefully is following the very clear statements that I'm making here, because this is very important to understand exactly what I'm saying. And everything that has been, if you like, reported since the 26th of February 2021 about the sighting of Samima Begum wearing so-called Western clothes, and the various aspects of the kind of statement either she made or the reports contained in a documentary produced by a woman with a Spanish name or background. All of those we are following when we are noting as reference whenever we come across anything. But we are not confusing, and we don't want anyone to confuse these events and these references with the clear duties, safeguarding children duties, the Tower Hamlets Council owed for years and didn't deliver the safeguarding duties. And we are saying that because the East London Mosque is known to Tower Hamlets Council, the fact that the East London Mosque was allowing the grooming of Sharmina Begum, even one child being groomed is one child too many. The fact that even one child was groomed, and that one is certain because that is in the entry in the Wikipedia. The fact that Sharmina Begum was groomed is too worrying, because that means the Tower Hamlets Council knowingly allowed the grooming to take place. Remember what we were saying just now. It's not just the Tower Hamlets Council failed to safeguard the children. We are saying the Tower Hamlets Council politically colluded with the grooming environment being maintained at the East London Mosque. Remember what we were just saying? Now, Tower Hamlets Council is guilty of colluding with the grooming of Sharmina Begum because during the years of their childhood, and this is very much Sharmina Begum's childhood we are talking about, during the years or during the period or years up to December 2014, when she was groomed to travel out of the UK and arrive in Syria. She was very much a child. And that time, that period, whether it was 1 year, 2 years, or longer, corresponded. That is, it took place at the same time as Tower Hamlets Council at that executive mayor level, was very much in direct contact with the East London Mosque. So, what was What was the reason? Because there cannot be any reason, but we have to ask rationally and forensically, what was the reason that might have existed? We are saying it didn't. There was no reason that could exist, but we are saying, by way of asking, what reason existed for Tower Hamlets Council to knowingly allow the dangerous act or acts of grooming of Sharmina Begum to take place from the East London Mosque? So you can rewind and see what I've just said. I'll go on to say that the reason we say the Tower Hamlets Council at the highest political executive level was in very regular contact with the East London Mosque. We are meaning by that the involvement of the executive mayor in post, who was a known supporter and contact of the thing called Tower Hamlets Council of Mosques. The Tower Hamlets Council of Mosques had an input, of course, a big input in terms of the number of people who attend the East London Mosque as simple worshippers. So the Tower Hamlets Council of Mosques has had and does have a bigger than average weight and size of involvement in the Tower Hamlets Council of Mosques, including the fact that the Tower Hamlets Council of Mosques has invited the executive mayor incumbent to its meetings and functions. So, what was missing from the functionality, the capacity to deliver the duty on the part of Tower Hamlets Council that allowed the grooming of Sharmina Begum? And the details of the grooming are summarized in the entry, in the Wikipedia entry about her, because it was quite extensive and it went on for some time. I mean, what was the purpose of the connection between Tower Hamlets Council's executive mayor and the relationship between the executive mayor and, by implication, the Tower Hamlets Council's relationship or Tower Hamlets Council administration's relationship with the Tower Hamlets Council of Mosques, of which the East London Mosque is the biggest member? Why did they allow the grooming of Sharmina Begum? Was that relationship done or based on the kind of agreement between the Tower Hamlets Council and the Tower Hamlets Council of Mosques that they would ignore such grooming going on, or they would distort the evidence of such grooming going on? Was there any third party or parties involved in the relationship between Tower Hamlets Council administration and the East London Mosque? We have to clarify that by East London Mosque, we do not mean the people who go to the mosque to say prayers, the people who ordinarily go to the mosque to say prayers. We mean the people who control the access and treat the East London Mosque as their property, which they shouldn't, but they do. So why did the Termless Council administration, fronted by an executive elected mayor, allow the grooming of the child, Sharmina Begum, to take place and to go on? Now, this raises other questions we shall come to later. Termless Council has got a different incumbent in the post of mayor, different than the one that was in post until the 23rd of April 2015. So remember, the Sharmina Begum went to Syria during the period when Lutfur Rahman was the incumbent in the post of elected executive mayor. And Lutfur Rahman is known to be a close associate of several members of the Termless Council of Mosques, including Maulana Shamsul Haq. And anyone watching this program previously would recall that the references have been made in this program, not in this edition, but in previous editions of this program, to the episode of the same Maulana Shamsul Haq being caught lying during a witness or evidence giving session before the election commissioner, the licensed law trader Richard Morey, during 2015. Because just before the election commissioner Richard Morey declared that Lutfur Rahman was to be sacked because he was not deemed to have been properly elected, lawfully elected mayor at the 22nd of May 2014 mayor election. That ruling by Richard Morey was based on quite a long list of evidence, including the evidence that Maulana Shamsul Haq and the Baroness Paula Munzila Uddin were among the two of the liars that had appeared before him to give evidence certifying the good character of Lutfur Rahman. Those two were caught lying and were condemned as liars in open court. So it's not like we are making up these things. These are all on the records. And Maulana Shamsul Haq was called a liar, in effect. I'm not quoting because I haven't got the script in front of me. But in effect, and it was reported as having been called a liar because he was accused by the side of the petitioners against the mayor post holder Lutfur Rahman, that he had asked the voters concerned before the 2014 so-called mayor election that to vote for Lutfur Rahman as the candidate for mayor was a religious duty based on the faith of the Muslims. It was a spiritual or spiritually carried out crime, offense. So when this was put to Maulana Shamsul Haq, while he appeared as a certifier of Lutfur Rahman's character, it was put to him that he had done that. He had asked people to vote for Lutfur Rahman at the election on the 22nd of May 2014. Shamsul Haq, Maulana Shamsul Haq, he, first of all, initially denied having done that. So a little while later, after the research was done during the hearing, and it was established that Maulana Shamsul Haq had been on the video, on a recorded video, saying what the petitioner side alleged he had done. And Maulana Shamsul Haq said, if the video shows I have done that, then I must have done that, or words to that effect. Now, this is the evidence. It's not something we are making up or we are paraphrasing. That is the evidence. So if that is the evidence of clear dishonesty and corruption by such a witness who was appearing as a kind of Islamic scholar and an Islamic alim leader, then it follows that it is quite possible that the Tower Hamlets Council of Mosques, of which Maulana Shamsul Haq has been a leading member, if not the leading member, was himself quite likely to have been aware of the activities that went on in grooming Sharmina Begum. Because Maulana Shamsul Haq is very close to those individuals who control access to the East London Mosque. And Maulana Shamsul Haq has got a very well-established record of very close and persistent access to the personnel controlling the East London Mosque. So any generally responsible person in the council would have wondered what was going on in the East London Mosque. If they didn't, then the opposite conclusion must be drawn, that they were participating in any kind of activities that they thought they could hide, they could conceal from scrutiny. And we are asserting this because when we spoke to, or let's say when we made contact with one or two current councillors, and who are kind of both under the influence of the current incumbent in the post of the elected mayor, and we asked them to answer a number of simple questions about what action the Tower Hamlets Council did or didn't take in safeguarding these children. These two councillors, because we have only spoken to two councillors in specific terms, did not reply exactly. And they haven't replied to us at this time, which is 12 minutes to midnight on Sunday, the 4th of April 2021. Now, if these councillors didn't have anything to hide, why haven't they replied in terms? Why haven't they said? The only thing they have said is that when these girls crossed into Syria, there was a different administration in place, by which they mean Lutfur Rahman was in place and not John Biggs, who is now currently in place. To us, that is, if they said that, that would be noted, but we would not accept that, because our question is not about Lutfur Rahman only. It is about him, but only as part of the role that he was duty bound to perform, as part of the duty owed to these children by the council as a whole. So if a current councillor or current incumbent in the post of mayor, like John Biggs, says to us that all these things happened while Lutfur Rahman was in post, we will note that, but we will not accept that for the following reasons. These children continued to be children even after Lutfur Rahman was kicked out of the post in April 2015. So 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. This is 6 calendar years since the ouster of Lutfur Rahman. Now going backwards, we can see that Shamima Begum is being described now as having passed 22 and 21. She's described as being 21 or 22. Now, even if she was treated as 22, go back 6 calendar years and you are at 2016, 2017, which is the period that they were still children in. And those were years, 2 years before, since Lutfur Rahman had been ousted, and 2 years since John Biggs got in on the 11th of June 2011. So we are talking about children, and we are talking about the council's duties to the children, these children. So the children remained children, continued to remain children up to the time they entered their adulthood, if you like, in legal terms, according to the law. And they remained, continued to be children for a number of years after John Biggs became incumbent in the post of elected mayor. It doesn't matter, even if John Biggs hadn't been installed, the council remained active as the local council, and its active duties continued to remain owed to these children. So our question remains, what action did the Town Council take to safeguard these children for 3 years? Or for any number of years concerned, as the calculation can conclusively prove, up to what date their duty ended as the authority that owed the duty of safeguarding the children. To this day, to this time, we are still waiting for the answers from Town councillors. One councillor we spoke to said that they were not the holder of the post that carries the references to children. So we thought, fair enough. So we put the questions we were putting to them to the person who does hold the post that carries the duty of safeguarding the children. Nothing has been received from them. And that shows, remember what we're saying? It's not that the Town Hamlets Council failed the duties to safeguard the children, which is absolutely undisputed. They are failing to answer questions about what they did or what they didn't. So it's an aggravation by Town Hamlets Council of its duty owed to the children, and also owed in law and owed to the community and society and the electorate. So we hope that up to this update is consistent and coherent and lucid, covering the whole duties thing as owed by Town Hamlets Council concerning various fields of its activities. I can say on the evidence that the people who are in posts, various posts, including the post of mayor, elected mayor, whoever the elected mayor at the time may be, that these people are in posts by essentially operating as being in denial of their duties. And the elected councillors in post at any given time generally are not any different in terms of their attitude, as has been seen over the years and as has been seen in this particular relation, because quite apart from us raising the questions about Sharmina Begum, effectively Sharmina Begum, Shamima Begum, and the other two girls, no known member of the electorate has raised anything like these questions. And that includes the two kind of councillors in elected posts as councillors from the Conservative Party, and the two that are not currently kind of members of anything active, but they do have council posts. One is Rabina Khan and one is Harun Mia. The Harun Mia is the one that is still a councillor, not Muhammad Harun, who ceased to be a councillor when he went to jail for housing fraud. But the two councillors, Rabina Khan and Muhammad Harun Mia, both from the Shadwell ward, to our knowledge, have remained silent about the council safeguarding duties as owed to the four Bethnal Green school girls, as have they two Conservative Party-linked councillors, Peter Goulds and his colleague. And these two, Woods and Goulds, have no excuse not to raise the question. So why haven't they? And this applies to both Rabina Khan and Harun Mia. Why haven't they raised the questions? We shall be asking about these questions and these councillors' role continuously until they actually make public what they have done and what they haven't done, and why have they not done what they should have done. I have to kind of qualify that last statement by saying that people outside may assume that anyone who is a elected councillor becomes knowledgeable after they get in because of that fact that they got elected. That is not the case. And there is no evidence whatsoever that says that Rabina Khan is independently capable of understanding most of the duties of the council and most of the duties to be representing and supporting people equally and without prejudice. And this applies to Harun Mia as well. Now, in comparison with those two, Peter Golds and his ex-colleague, Councillor Woods, may have better abilities. But the fact that they may have better abilities doesn't mean that they would deliver any better quality or fact of questioning the council administration about the betrayal of the 4 schoolgirls. Peter Golds is, of course, a known element who is an extreme anti-Muslim, hate inciter, and hate peddling kind of person. Woods is not so notorious in the same way. But when it comes to actually defending the rights of these children as violated and betrayed by the local Towners Council, I don't think either of those two conservative linked councillors would be much bothered. And they have been silent as far as I can see. But again, we shall fact check, and if they have actually not been silent, we shall update accordingly. But even if they have posted something tokenistic, would not necessarily be the answer to the question, which is the Towners Council as a whole has let down these children for, let's say, 10 calendar years. And when we say 10 calendar years, we advisedly refer to the start of the corrupt elected mayor post that was foisted first time on the council in October 2010. And we say, because we don't know at what stage these girls were first contacted and targeted for grooming. So we say that they were targeted for grooming pretty early on when they entered the secondary school. And that pretty early on, the point of time is not exactly known to us. So therefore, we have to include the possibility of the start of their school, kind of attendance in that school. And that coincides with the start of the mayor system in Tower Hamlets Council. So we've discussed Rabina Khan and Harun Mia. We have discussed Peter Golds and his conservative-linked ex-colleague. Now, what about the Labour Party members of the council who are from the various wards in Tower Hamlets? The evidence shows that all those counselors have been silent, and they have not made any publicly accessible comment or commitment to safeguard the children or to support the duty of the council being carried out to safeguard the children. So, what we shall be doing is to continue in the next available program.